screen?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll continue with where we left off yesterday. Okay, in day before class. So I just showed you how you can get the limits and the eigenvalues given a matrix. Today I will talk about something that is very interesting and very important, and it has to do with quantum Monte Carlo methods. Okay, so when one is dealing with quantum Monte Carlo methods, which have become very important in both electronic structure and otherwise, what one has to do is there will be times when we need to update inverse of a matrix. This is something that you come across in quantum Monte Carlo if you ever do it. And updating the inverse of a matrix is the initial matrix and the final matrix usually differ. The initial matrix and the final matrix usually differ only in one matrix element or so. Differ only in one matrix element. So just because one matrix element is different doesn't mean that you have to spend enormous amount of time. So the fastest you can do for inverting a matrix is of the order of n squared ln n number of calculations, where n by n is the order of the matrix. So if you have an n by n order of the matrix, you have n squared ln n number of calculations, and usually these matrices are huge. So if at every step of the Monte Carlo method you have to recompute the inverse of a matrix, then from scratch, then it's going to be very intensive computation. So how does one avoid that? So to avoid that, we need to see how we can modify the inverse of a matrix. That is, how is the inverse of a matrix? Inverse of a matrix related to the inverse of another matrix. Obtained from the original matrix by adding a matrix of rank 1. Okay, so what you are going to do is, I have a matrix A is the initial matrix, and I go to a matrix B, which is equal to A plus a matrix M, which is of rank 1. I suppose you know what the rank of a matrix is. I've already taught you that. Any doubts about rank of a matrix? Any doubts about the rank of a matrix? It is the largest sub-square matrix which has non-zero determinant. Okay, if the submatrix which is largest has non-zero determinant, then the order of the submatrix is the rank of the original matrix. Okay, so that's what we mean by rank of matrix. So how do you know whether a matrix has rank 1? See, you remember that I talked about diagonalization problem. And when I talked about diagonalization of a matrix, I had the following result. Matrix A, the original matrix that is given to me, is nothing but P lambda, P inverse, where lambda is a diagonal matrix of eigenvalues. And P is the modal matrix of the polar matrix. So what we have, if I write down explicitly, is the following. So lambda would be just lambda 1, lambda 2, etc. lambda n 0, 0. So this is lambda, and P is given by this matrix x1, x2, xn, where xi is an eigenvector of A corresponding to eigenvalue I, lambda I. Okay, so now what is P inverse given by? A is a Hermitian matrix. So what is the matrix P inverse given by? See, x1, x2, xn are all eigenvectors. So what can you say about their orthogonality properties? What is xi, xj?
0.
Xi, xj is 0. You must learn to think in terms of Kronecker deltas. It is delta I here. It is not 0 when I is equal to j. Okay.
Yes.
So what is P inverse given by? How do you get the inverse of a unitary matrix?
By taking its complex transpose.
Complex transpose. That's correct. So P inverse is given by x1 star, x2 star, etc. xn star. So since I have written them as star and x1 is a row vector, x1 star is a row vector. Earlier x1 was a column vector, x1 star is a row vector, or I can also write it as the usual notation x1 bar transpose, x2 bar transpose, etc. xn bar transpose, because the transpose of a column vector is a row vector. So x1, x2, etc. are all column vectors. So x1 bar transpose, x2 bar transpose, etc. are all row vectors. Now let us see what is P lambda P inverse. This is equal to x1, x2, xn. So that is P times lambda 1, lambda 2, etc. lambda n 0, 0. I have x1 bar transpose, x2 bar transpose, etc. xn bar transpose. So I can actually write it as x1, x2, etc. xn times lambda 1 x1 bar transpose, lambda 2 x2 bar transpose, etc. lambda n xn bar transpose. Okay, and what is that equal to? Lambda 1 x1 bar transpose plus lambda 2 x2 bar transpose plus etc. plus lambda n xn bar transpose. So I have been able to write my matrix A, which is a Hermitian matrix, in terms of these eigenvectors and eigenvalues. Okay, so if I know the eigenvectors and eigenvalues, I can always write down A as equal to sigma over I lambda xi bar transpose. So xi is one row n, this thing n rows or one column, right? Because just look at this. It has got n rows and one column, so it's a n by 1 xi bar transpose is therefore 1 by n. And so what you can be an n by n matrix. Okay, so if the rank of a matrix is 1, what can you say about the eigenvalues?
How the xi is becoming n cross 1, n by 1.
You see, x1, xi is a column vector, right? So how many rows that does a column vector have? It's n rows and 1 column,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir. I.
So that's why it is n by 1.
Okay, sir.
And the transpose of that is 1 by n. Okay. Now, if the rank of A is 1, what can you tell about the eigenvalues?
Sir, in the previous step, why have you taken transpose like x1 bar transpose? We had proven P inverse is x1 bar complex conjugate.
So if I take, if I transpose the rows and columns, okay, x1 becomes the column, x1 which is a column here
Becomes the row.
becomes the row.
Yes.
Okay, so x1 becomes a row, okay, x2 becomes a row, xn becomes a row.
Yes.
Okay, so each one of them are rows but with complex conjugate. Okay, so when I said because x1 is a n by 1 matrix, its transpose is a 1 by n matrix, right?
Yes.
So it has
Yes.
got 1 row and n columns. Okay, is it clear?
Sir, but above we have written P inverse equals x1 bar complex conjugate. So we replace the complex conjugate.
Complex conjugate is the same thing as bar.
Okay,
Okay.
I was confusing it with the vector sign. Okay.
No. It is
Okay.
actually a bar is a complex conjugate.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, so let's continue. So my question, if the rank of if A is a singular matrix, what can you tell about its eigenvalues? What is the relationship between determinant of A and the eigenvalues? How is determinant of A related to its eigenvalues?
Sir, no.
Huh? It's something that I have done and I even proved it for you. Do you remember this or you don't even recall? Product of the eigenvalues is the determinant.
Yes, sir.
Huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if determinant A is singular, what can you say?
Product of the eigenvalues is 0.
So what can you say about eigenvalues?
They are all 0.
All of them need to be 0, is it?
One of them is 0.
At least one of them must be 0.
At least. Okay.
Okay. At least one of them must be 0. Okay. So, but if the matrix A has rank 1, how many eigenvalues must be 0?
None of them.
Huh?
None of them.
No. If it is rank 1, it is a n by n matrix and it is rank 1. So only one eigenvalue is non-zero. So if the rank of A is n by n is 1, and only one eigenvalue is non-zero.
Sir, how do you say this?
How I say that is because I can keep deflating the matrices. That is, look at this matrix B is equal to A minus, okay, lambda 1 x1 x bar transpose. Okay, so this is what are the eigenvalues of this B matrix? At least one eigenvalue is 0, isn't it? Because A is what? A is given by lambda 1 x1 bar x1 bar transpose plus lambda 2 x2 bar transpose, etc. So if I subtract minus lambda 1 x1 bar transpose, it means that at least one eigenvalue is 0. Okay, so I have to keep on removing the eigenvalues which are, so B is a singular matrix with 1 0 eigenvalue. Okay, now if you want to have all the what will happen is B has one rank less. Okay, which is if A is non-singular, B will be singular but with one eigenvalue 0. Okay, so if I make two eigenvalues 0, then I have a B prime which will have A minus lambda 1 x1 bar transpose minus lambda 2 x2 bar transpose. Okay, this will have 2 0 eigenvalues. So B will be of rank n minus 2. Okay, so what happens is the following. See, when you say something is rank 1, you have a n by n matrix, right?
Yes, sir.
Right? So you have n by n matrix, and only one by one matrix is non-zero. Matrix is having a non-zero determinant. So which means that n minus 1 rows and n minus 1 columns or n minus 1 rows are all, or if I take, let me put it this way. So if I take n rows, if I take n rows of A, okay, then only one row vector is independent. Okay, so for example, let me take the following matrix. Okay, I'll give you an example. I'll take this matrix 1 1 1 2 2 2 3 3. Now tell me, what is the rank of this matrix? What is the rank of this matrix?
One.
Rank is 1, right?
Yes.
Because all the rows are linearly dependent on others. Okay, every row can be expressed as a multiple of one of the rows. For example, row 2 is row 1 times 2, row 3 is row 1 times 3, and so forth. Okay, so of the three vectors that you have, there's only one linearly independent vector in this. Okay, so when you have a n by n matrix, okay, if you are having only one non-zero eigenvalue, okay, it means that all the rows are linearly dependent, which means the n minus 1 eigenvalues are 0. Okay, so if it has to be rank 1, then n minus 1 eigenvalues must be 0. Right? Any submatrix you take, okay, which is greater than 1 will have a 0, will have a 0 eigenvalue. So any 2 by 2 matrix you take here, submatrix, it will have a 0 eigenvalue, right? Or 3 by 3 matrix has 2 0 eigenvalues, okay? Okay, think about it, because it's not, it's not something too profound, but it is just, you have to convince yourself. Okay, so what it implies is the following. What it implies is that any matrix of rank 1 can be expressed as a product of 2 vectors U and V. Okay, so the n by n matrix you get is, okay, UV bar transpose, because U is a column vector, so U is n by 1 and V bar transpose is 1 by n. Okay, so any vector, any matrix A, if it is written as UV bar transpose, then A is a matrix of rank 1. Okay, so to be a matrix of rank 1, one thing that you should know is that if it acts on any vector, so take any arbitrary vector A, any arbitrary x, then Ax is proportional to x. Okay, so if I take this matrix Ax, where A is equal to UV bar transpose times x, so this will give me as equal to, is not proportional to x, sorry. X is proportional to u. Okay, so I can write it as V bar transpose x times, let me write it without confusing you. Right, Ax is UV bar transpose times x, and I can write this as this one, or it's equal to inner product of V of x and u. Okay, so no matter what x you take, it's always proportional to u. Okay, which means A is of rank 1, because if it has to be proportional to u, then all the rows of A must be proportional to each other. Okay, so that you will have a proportionality constant that comes out this way. Do you follow it?
Sir, how is AX proportional to U?
Ax is what? A is UV bar transpose, right?
Yes.
So Ax is equal to UV bar transpose times x, right?
Yes.
So, you know, matrix multiplication is associative, right? UV bar transpose x is equal to U times V bar transpose x. And V bar transpose x is nothing but V comma x. So UV bar transpose x is proportional to U. So you take any vector x, you always get something that is proportional to U as the result when A operates on x. This is possible only when A has all rows which are proportional.
Sir, could you explain
Yeah.
what inner product? I'm getting confused.
What is inner product? Okay. Inner product V comma x is equal to, if I give you two vectors V equal to v1, v2, vn, and x is equal to x1. See, the problem is you people don't read and come and you think that you know everything. Okay, that's your problem. So v comma x, because these are all things that I have done in the very first lecture, which I gave vector spaces.
Yes, sir. This definition I know, sir. But sir, how did you get the inner?
Okay, so this I can write as the following. That is, I can take so what I need to do is I have to multiply it to get a scalar, right? So what I'll do is I'll take something with 1 row and n columns. Okay, so which is v1 star, v2 star, vn star, and then the column vector x1, x2, xn. So this is v1 bar transpose, and this is x. So when you make a matrix multiplication, what do you get?
Okay.
This is a 1 by n matrix multiplying it n by 1 matrix. You get a scale which is v comma x, which is the inner product. So
Yes,
you
sir.
get
Got
this.
it. Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So this is one thing that you know, and then we can also show this result. Supposing I wrote down A is equal to sigma or I lambda I xi bar transpose, where x are the eigenvectors. So I is equal to 1 to n. So if all lambda i's comma I equal to 1 or 0, okay, then what you will see is that A is equal to xn bar transpose. Okay, so that you operate upon any vector x is equal to xn bar transpose. This is lambda n, right? So this is equal to lambda n times x, and that's equal to xn comma x times lambda n times xn, which is proportional. Okay, so what I am finding is that if A is of rank 1, as I have shown here, because all the n minus 1 eigenvalues are 0, so it's of rank 1, then A of x is going to be just proportional to xn. So it is necessary and sufficient. So any matrix written as UV bar transpose is a matrix of rank 1. Okay. So now what I'm going to say is the following. That is, if I modify my matrix A by adding UV bar transpose, then if A inverse is known, the inverse, if A inverse is known, then A plus UV bar transpose inverse is given by inverse minus of A inverse UV bar transpose A inverse divided by 1 plus V comma A inverse U. Looks a little forbidding, right? Because if I want to know the inverse of A plus UV bar transpose, and if I know A inverse, then it is related to A inverse by you take A inverse minus of A inverse UV bar transpose A inverse and 1 plus B comma A inverse U. Okay. So most of the times UV bar transpose just corresponds to one element. Okay. So maybe some UI, let's say it corresponds to some Bij. Okay. So A inverse Bij, A inverse will only be one element. Okay. So it is going to be this entire thing that I have written on top. This will be very easy to compute. Oh, sorry. A inverse. A inverse UV bar transpose upon UV. Okay. So this is very easy to compute usually. One second. Okay, so this can be easily computed. And so also the this thing, what's in the denominator, which is A inverse U. Okay, so the denominator also can become computed very easily. Now, how do you prove it? The proof is extremely simple. Although it looks very complicated, it's very simple. Okay, so let A be a unit vector by a unit matrix. Sorry, I. Okay, then the above relation implies I plus UV bar transpose inverse is equal to, if A is equal to I, what is A inverse? That's also I minus a UV bar transpose divided by 1 plus V comma U. Because A is equal to I, A inverse is also equal to I. So just replace A inverse by I, and where it is not necessary to write it, just drop it. Okay. Now I want to know whether this is indeed the inverse. Okay. So whether this formula is correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down the following. That is I plus UV bar transpose I plus UV bar transpose inverse equal to I, right? Or I'll say that I plus UV bar transpose. Okay, for the other one, I use the right hand side. Okay, I minus U bar transpose divided by 1 plus V comma U. Okay, so this is what I want to show, that this is equal to I. This is what I need to show. So if I want to show, I'll have to multiply I into I. Okay, I into UV bar transpose is UV bar transpose, and the next one is minus I into UV bar transpose by 1 plus UV bar 1 plus V comma U is the same thing, because I does not change anything. So minus of V bar transpose divided by 1 plus V comma U. And then the other one is minus UV bar transpose into UV bar transpose divided by 1 plus V comma U. Okay. Now all I need to do is just take these two things and this thing, add it up. Okay. So what I will get is the following. That is I plus UV bar transpose plus V bar transpose into V comma U. Okay. Minus UV bar transpose. I'll get. Okay. So minus of UV bar transpose UV bar transpose divided by 1 plus V comma U. Okay. So this is just a very simple algebra that I have done. Just multiplying the two things and then taking the this thing LCM. So this is equal to I plus so I have UV bar transpose into V comma U is also UV bar transpose, right? Divided by 1 plus V comma U minus of UV bar transpose into UV bar transpose divided by 1 comma U, and these two things will cancel. So I get I. So my formula works for the identity matrix. Any doubts? Is very trivial this thing matrix algebra or vector algebra, whatever you want to call. Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, so given this, so what I have is this formula works that I plus UV bar transpose inverse is equal to I plus UV bar transpose inverse is equal to I minus UV bar transpose divided by 1 plus V comma U. Okay, now you take the following. You take A plus UV bar transpose inverse. Okay, so I can write it as, take out A as a common factor. I can write it as A times I plus A inverse. I can do this because all I have done is taken A as a common factor. Okay, so A into I is A into A inverse is I. So what you are going to get back is the left hand side. Or how do you take the inverse of two matrices? If I give you A B inverse, what is this equal to?
V inverse inverse.
If you know A inverse B inverse, what is A B inverse?
V inverse A.
B inverse A inverse. Right? This is easy to prove. B inverse A inverse is A B inverse. Okay, so this I can write it as I plus A U bar V, sorry, not U bar. U A inverse UV bar inverse into A inverse. Correct? So what is it that we had the relationship for I plus UV bar transpose inverse? So replace U by A inverse U in the form of, so you have the UV bar transpose inverse you have. So what you need to do is you just replace A inverse U by U. Okay, so this will give me I into, so I plus A inverse U comma T is what? Is I minus, okay, A inverse UV bar transpose divided by 1 plus V comma A inverse U. This multiplied by A inverse. Is it correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Is this correct? No problems, no? So now you just multiply it again. So you have A plus U V bar transpose inverse is equal to A inverse of A inverse V bar transpose A inverse divided by 1 plus V comma A inverse U. So this is what we set out to prove. Okay, and this is known as Sherman-Morrison formula. Or Woodbury formula. So whenever you are doing Fermi and Monte Carlo calculations, which are actually quantum Monte Carlo calculations, then we have to keep updating the inverses, because the inverses come there simply because they are kind of Green's functions. We'll not worry about that one. But when you want to update the inverse of a matrix, when you change only one of the matrix elements, then this is the formula which is very simple to use. Okay. I think now I will go over to something slightly different.
Sir,
So let's see. Yeah.
sir, one of the matrix element is related to the fact that the rank is 1.
UV bar transpose is rank 1.
Yes.
That is why I can do this.
Okay. Yes. Okay, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now let me go to something else which are known as what are called reducible and irreducible matrices. So the definition of these things is very simple. Okay. Now to define this, what I'm going to do is let me consider two subsets of number. Okay, I comma j. So I contains numbers I1, I2, etc. Okay, IP j contains okay j1, j2, j3 is I. JQ and IP plus JQ is equal to n, the order of the matrix. Okay, IP plus JQ is equal to n. That means I union J is equal to 2, comma etc. n. Okay, and when you want to find out what is the difference between the two sets I and J, this is equal to null set. Okay, and neither I is null nor J is null. Okay, a matrix is reducible okay if for I in I and J in J, Aij is equal to 0. Okay, so you will come across reducible matrices in many ways, in many different places. For example, in group theory, you are always encountering reducible matrices. Okay, because you want to create irreducible representations of them. Now, let me give you an example. Let me take a 4x4 matrix. A11, A12, A13, A14, A21, A22, A23, A24, A31, A32, A33, A34, A41, A42, A43, A44. Okay. Let I equal to 1, comma 2. Let contain this set 1, comma 2, and let J contain the set 3, comma 4. Okay. I union J is equal to N, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. There's N elements. Okay. And I minus J is 0. There are no elements because no common elements between I and J. So there is no overlap of the two sets I and J. The overlap is 0, but the union is all of N. Okay. So what does it mean? It means that if A11, sorry, if A13 equal to A23 equal to A14 equal to A24 equal to 0, then A is reducible. Okay, so what does it mean? It means A13, A23, A14, A24 are 0, which means this block is 0. So when this block is 0, then this is a reducible matrix. Okay, so for it to be an irreducible matrix, that should not be 0. Okay, so
Sir,
yeah.
sir, so reducible or non-reducible is with respect to the set of numbers ij always. It is not the matrix itself.
It is the, okay, let me put it this way. Given a matrix, you look for a set I and J.
Huh.
If you find a set I and J such that I comma J is equal to 0 for I in set I, J in set J, then the matrix is reducible.
Okay, yes, okay, sir.
Okay, so it has to do with both the matrix and the I and J. Okay,
Yes,
and I and J should also satisfy the property that union of I and J is N, and the difference between I and J is equal to 0.
0. Okay,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. So supposing I consider a matrix P with all non-negative numbers, with all numbers greater than 0. With all elements, rather. So all elements Bij greater than 0, and we say the matrix P is greater than 0, and it is because you don't have any 0 elements at all. So when you don't have any 0 elements in the matrix, then obviously the matrix is irreducible, right? So now where do you come across these kinds of matrices? Okay. Just 1 second. My this thing, okay. A mistake. My Wacom went off. Okay. So we encounter the matrices P statistical mechanics. So what happens is in statistical mechanics, what you have is you have a configuration I of atoms or spins or whatever you want to consider, okay, etc., etc. For example, I can give you an example of spin. So take phones, okay, each of spin half. Then I can have the following configurations. I can have all the spins up or one spin down, and this down spin can move through sides. So it can be this, okay, or it can be okay, and etc., etc., all the way to down, 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 down. So how many such configurations you can write down? When I have 4 spins of spin half, they can either be up or down. So how many possible configurations can I write down? It's a trivial question. I'm asking for an answer. Give an answer. Otherwise, you know, everything is blank. I don't know what the hell is happening there.
The 4C2.
That is wrong. Each spin can be up or down. There are 4 such spins. So how many possibilities are there?
2 to the power 4.
Correct. So 2 to the power 4 is 16 configurations are possible. Okay. So when you have these spins, okay, and there is thermal fluctuation that is taking place. Okay, when the thermal fluctuation is taking place, then you can have transitions taking place from one configuration to another configuration. Bij, where I want to create a 16, it also belongs to 1 to 16. Bij is the probability with which the transition from state I to state B. Okay, so what we have is the following. I have a probability matrix, which I can write as P11, P12 to P116. One P2 to P216, P16 P16 to P16. So what can you say about the probability matrices?
All P's are greater than 0.
So what can you say about the probability? Equal to or greater than 0, and in most cases at finite temperatures the probabilities are always greater than 0. Only at t equal to 0 K, then you can have probabilities of others being 0, some higher energy configurations being 0. Okay, so the probabilities are greater than 0. So now, so these are irreducible matrices. Or matrices with non-negative matrix elements, or matrices with positive matrix elements, not non-negative. Let me say all of them are, there is no 0 anywhere. with all positive matrix elements. And what can you say sum of each row? What can you say about the sum of each row? See, I have 4 spins. I have 16 configurations, right? The system has to be in one of the 16 configurations, even after you make a transition. Okay, sum of each row is 1 because these are probability matrices. So the sum of all possible probabilities are 1. So the probability that P11 plus P12, that is from making a transition from state 1 to either staying the same state or making a transition to all the other state, to any of the other states, that should be 1. Okay, so this is one of the important things. Okay, so in such matrices, I will state with proof. If you want proof, but it is not complicated except that I have to do it in many steps. In such matrices, okay, the highest eigenvalue satisfies the following. One, it is non-degenerate. That means there is a simple root. Okay. Components of yours are all positive. Okay, or at least of the are all of the same type. Because if x is an eigenvector, minus x is also an eigenvector, so that's why I have to be careful. Okay, so all the matrix elements are of the same sign. So rather, all the components of the eigenvector of the same are of the same sign. So what it means is that if we keep operating on any vector x in the limit x n tending to infinity, I'll tell you what is in the limit k tending to infinity. Okay, p for k x is equal to, I can write it as p times xk minus 1 will tend towards the highest eigenvector. The highest eigenvector, it means the eigenvector corresponding to the highest. So vector being highest or smallest, but I'm quoting put highest in quotes because that means that the eigenvector corresponding to the highest eigenvalue is what you'll get. And let us see how we can prove it. Okay, proof of this is very simple. Okay, so let us take a matrix it's a little right. Let's take a matrix A whose eigenvalues are lambda 2. Okay, So lambda 1 is a high value. Okay, that comes up. Start with any argument. X, okay. Then limit n tending to xn a xn divided by xn is equal to lambda 1, okay, where xn, let me call this x naught, a to the power n x naught, okay. Is that clear what I am saying? All I have done is I have taken a matrix A which is n by n, and I assume that it has eigenvalues lambda 1 greater than lambda 2 greater than lambda n, etc. Okay. So I take any arbitrary vector x 0 and I keep operating on that by the matrix A. Okay. So if I after operating on that by n, I compute the product xn a xn divided by xn xn, and I assert that this goes to the highest eigenvalue lambda 1. Okay. And how can I prove that? I'll prove it in the following way. Okay. Let E1, E2, En. So let me call it E1, E2, En be the eigenvectors to the eigenvalues lambda 1, lambda 2, etc., lambda n. Okay, we can expand. See, this is all for Hermitian matrices. Please remember, because when lambdas are complex, okay, you can't compare two complex numbers. Okay, so only real numbers can be compared, and real eigenvalues are only for Hermitian matrices. We can expand the initial vector x naught as C1 E1 plus Cn En. Okay. Now, from a to the power k x, this one, a to the power k times E1 plus etc. plus Cn a to the power k times En. Right? Because when you operate by a, you get a times E1. When you operate by a again, you get a squared times E1, and so on and so forth. So for each term. So I can actually write this one as C1 lambda 1 power k E1 plus etc. plus En. Let me write the second term. Lambda 2 is equals. Let me write the second term carefully. The C2 lambda 2 is the k E2 plus Cn or En. Okay. Now, if I take this vector and I'll say that what is it? So this is equal to xk. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'll form xk comma a times xk. What get? I'll get C1 lambda 1 to the power k e1 plus C2 lambda 2 to the power k e2 plus etc. plus Cn lambda n to the power k en comma the inner product of this with C1 lambda 1 to the power k plus 1 e1 plus C2 lambda 2 to the power k plus 1 e2 plus etc. plus Cn lambda n to the power k plus 1 en. Right? All I have done is just now I know that Ij inner product is always delta Ij as A is Hermitian. Any questions? Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, so because of that, xk Axk is equal to what is it? Lambda 1 over k, lambda 1 to the power 2k plus 1 plus modulus C2 squared lambda 1 to the power 2k, lambda 2 to the power 2k plus 1 plus etc. plus modulus lambda n to the power 2k plus 1. What do I get for C comes beside xk? This I'll get as modulus C1 squared lambda 1 to the power 2k plus C squared lambda power 2k plus etc. plus modulus Cn squared lambda n to the power 2k. Right? So now let us see. So xk 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 is equal to modulus C1 squared lambda 1 to the power 2k plus 1 plus modulus C2 squared lambda 2 to the power 2k plus 1 plus modulus Cn squared lambda n to the power k plus 1 divided by modulus C1 squared lambda 1 to the power 2k plus modulus C2 squared lambda 2 to the power 2k plus etc. plus lambda C squared to the power 2. So what I'll do is I'll take lambda 1 to the power 2k plus 1 as the common factor in the equation 1 and lambda 1 to the power 2k plus 2k in the equation 2. So I can write this as lambda 1 to the power 2k plus 1 to modulus C1 squared plus modulus C2 squared lambda 2 by lambda 1 to the power 2k plus 1 etc. plus modulus Cn squared lambda n by lambda 1 to the power 2k plus 1 divided by lambda 1 to the power 2k modulus C1 squared plus modulus C2 squared lambda 2 by etc. plus modulus Cn squared lambda n upon lambda 1 to the power 2k. Now, can you tell me what happens, lambda 2 by lambda 1, or lambda 3 by lambda 1, etc. Lambda n by lambda 1 are all less than 1, right? Since lambda 1 is the highest eigenvalue. Okay. Now what happens? Limit n tending to infinity, lambda n, sorry, k. Limit k tending to infinity, lambda n so lambda I by lambda 1, I not equal to 1. What is this equal to?
0.
See, lambda by lambda 1 is less than 1. I keep raising it to higher and higher powers. What happens to that?
It will be 0.
0. So if it were to be greater than 1, what happens?
Infinite.
I'm just asking, curious. It goes to?
Infinite.
It becomes infinite. But when the two are equal, you have only one, right? So nothing happens. So that way 1 is a singular point. So I can say that in the limit n tending to infinity, or the k tending to infinity, k by xk comma xk. Okay, so this is equal to, if I look at that equation, I have lambda 1 to the power 2k plus 1 divided by lambda 1 to the power 2k into minus 1 square plus 0 plus 0, etc. 0. Or what is that equal to? Lambda 1. Okay, so this is one of the algorithms that people use for getting the highest eigenvalue. Okay, so once you have the highest eigenvalue and the highest eigenvector, you can get the second highest value and second eigenvector by deflating it. Okay, so if we get lambda 1 and E1 of A, then get 2 from the same method on the matrix V equal to A minus lambda 1 E1 dot transpose. Remember the expression that I had for A in terms of lambda i's. So when I do this, the lambda 1 eigenvalue goes to 0. Okay, so the second highest eigenvalue, lambda 2, is the highest eigenvalue of B. So the second highest eigenvalue of A is the highest eigenvalue of B, and you can do the power method on B and get lambda 2. So this way you can indeed get low-lying eigenvalues of large matrices. It's very non-efficient. There are much better methods known as the Davidson's algorithm and all that. Okay, better methods. It's a Davidson's algorithm. or large matrices. Because if lambda 1 and lambda 2 are very close, okay, then what happens is lambda 1 to the power 2k plus 1 divided by lambda, rather lambda 2 by lambda 1 to the power 2k plus 1 goes to 0 very slowly. So which means you need to do many operations in order to get the accuracy for eigenvalue 1. Now, this is one of the common methods that are being taught in numerical analysis, although never used really. Now I'll come back to my matrix P. Consider it. We want to get equilibrium
Transition matrix P.
of any subject. Which is actually mistakes. P, you remember the transition matrix that I talked about, P, P11, P12, etc. You have already forgotten.
The probability matrix.
The probability matrix. Okay, there's the transition probability matrix. Okay, so now I want to get the equilibrium thing. So what do you mean by equilibrium? By equilibrium, what we mean is any further transition not change the equilibrium probabilities. Okay. So now look at the matrix P. Okay. And eigenvalues them. Has all positive elements. Okay. Right, that I've stated the proof. So I can move this way. Okay, so we can interpret the comments of the eigenvector as equal to configuration. So supposing lambda 1 is the highest eigenvalue, lambda 1 actually will be equal to 1. This you can prove it. I'm not going to do it. Okay. So if that is a high eigenvalue, the eigenvector has phi1, phi2, etc. Phi n, where all phi are greater than 0. And what you also know is what do you mean by an eigenvector? Okay. So what the eigenvector is that P operating upon phi1, phi2, phi n is giving me back, because lambda 1 is equal to 1, gives me back phi1, phi2, phi. What it means is that I make the transition. Okay, so which means sigma over j p phi I times Pij is equal to 5% multiple different ways. 1 second. Pij Pij is equal to pi I. What it means is that even if you keep repeatedly making these this thing jumps from state I to state j, okay, the equilibrium properties don't change. That's exactly what you mean by an eigen function or an eigenvector. Okay, so what you are seeing is that if you have the highest eigenvalue lambda 1 equal to 1, then your probability matrix that you have P, the eigenvector corresponding to lambda 1 equal to 1 will have all entries positive, and these positive entries give the equilibrium probabilities, because any kind of transition that you keep making, okay, you still get back the same probability as you started with. Okay, this is the dynamic equilibrium that one is talking about. Okay, molecule 1 goes to molecule 2, but then molecule 2 also comes back to molecule 1. So there is a constant back and forth switching governed by the probabilities Pij. Okay, and that is going to give me the same, even if I do these transitions, then I still get back the original state, the original probability pi a. Okay, now in Monte Carlo methods, exactly the same as the power method. In Monte Carlo method, we start with an arbitrary configuration. So the arbitrary configuration of vector x and by the matrix P. Okay, this is done by what is called, the one-step transition probability elements are used. So you visit each one of these configurations and try to move them. So one by one you do that. You keep on doing it, then it is a power method. Okay, keep operating on this by the matrix P. In the end, for large we get probabilities which are thermodynamic, equilibrium, or thermodynamic probabilities. So you get the properties, then the energy of a configuration. So you can do thermodynamic averages, okay, and we can do averages. It's possible to do thermodynamic averages, which is any property Q is just given by Qi pi I, where Qi is the property in the configuration I. So Q should be magnetization, which is the difference between the number of up and down spins, or it can be energy, is actually the interaction energy between the spins, as in some of the models in magnetism. and so on and so forth. So this is the standard technique. This is the basis for the Monte Carlo calculations. Okay, so these P's are called the states I called Markos. One step transition probabilities. So they are the one step transition probabilities, and you can do the quantum calculations using this one. So this is the basis for the calculations. I wanted to give you two examples. One is how to get the highest eigenvalue as one, and second, when you do quantum Monte Carlo, how you can avoid having to compute the inverse of a matrix every time, but just by using a Sherman-Morrison or Woodbury formula, you can cut down the amount of computation. And the second one was I wanted to show you in classical Monte Carlo how you can use these positive matrices, okay, which are probability matrices. You can have a process by which you can calculate thermodynamic averages of a system. Okay, so with this, I will stop my discussion of the matrix algebra. I have done quite a bit in terms of the various kinds of theorems and properties of matrices, and I have also given you where you can actually apply them, and I have given you a bit of numerical methods for doing it. From the next lecture onwards, I will start with what are called classical orthogonal polynomials. Okay, these are polynomials which you will come across in the quantum mechanics of either atoms, hydrogen atom, for example, or a harmonic oscillator. So we come across these, and I'll talk about them But I will also try to give you a parallel between vectors and functions. How functions can be treated like vectors, and how you can have the same properties as inner products and various things. There's one aspect of it I have not covered, which probably I should have covered, but I don't know. It was a bit, it's time consuming, so I did not cover. It is called the generalized eigenvalue problem. Where x equal to lambda times bs, b is positive, isn't it? A and B are Hermitian. This is the problem that you are most of the times solving in quantum mechanics. Like for example, you say C is equal to ESC. You come up with this equation, it's an overlap matrix. H is a Hermitian matrix, and E is the eigenvalue. So you come across these in quantum chemistry or any quantum mechanics when you want to calculate the eigenvalues of a given Hamiltonian. Okay, because the Hamiltonian matrix can be expressed as a Hamiltonian can be expressed as a matrix, and if you have non-orthogonal basis vectors, then S becomes an overlap matrix which is positive definite. Okay, I think I'll stop this lecture here, and
reference books for the StatMax you discussed today.
Yeah, Wilf. But only thing is that Wilf does not give you any interactive Monte Carlo or models. Okay, but it's the algebra. If you want to know about Monte Carlo, you have to look at computational statistical mechanics books. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So that I don't give you references for that. Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions?
The Monte Carlo, what you were discussing, so the etymology is that they are scientists, or does it mean something?
No. Monte Carlo is, there is a small state next to Nice in France. Okay, there's a. Have you heard of Monaco Grand Prix? Grand Prix? Do you people follow a Formula One?
No, sir.
Do people follow Formula One racing?
No,
One
sir.
second, let me
No.
wait for. Monaco is a province. Nice in France. Southern and capital of that place. Capital of Monaco is Monte Carlo, famous for gambling. One of those casinos that you have lots of casinos. It is like Las Vegas or Atlantic City. Okay, so it's famous for gambling, and because of that, gambling involves random numbers, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
this Monte Carlo, so that's the reason why whenever you deal with random numbers to study properties, you call them Monte Carlo techniques.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so the name Monte Carlo comes because of a province famous for gambling.
Okay.
And I thought you were interested in Formula One racing because Monte Carlo is one of the F1 circuits.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So let me stop here, and then we will continue on Monday again. Okay. Okay.